Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into a project management process that, honestly, can either sink your project if you ignore it, or become its secret superpower if you master it. We're talking all about monitoring communications. You've been there, right? We all have. That just awful, sinking feeling on a project where you feel like you're completely lost in a fog. You know, key decisions are being made, but somehow you're not in the loop. Deadlines shift, and you feel like you're the last person on Earth to find out. It's more than just frustrating. It's a recipe for absolute disaster. And look, this isn't just a minor annoyance. When communication really breaks down, the consequences are severe. I'm talking vital information vanishing into a black hole, stakeholders getting angry and completely disengaged, and yeah, ultimately, the whole project is put at risk. The stakes here are incredibly high.
So how do we stop this from happening? How do we prevent all this chaos? Well, the answer is a formal process called monitor communications. The best way to think of it is like air traffic control for your project. It's a whole system designed to make sure the right information gets to the right people at exactly the right time. It prevents collisions and keeps everything moving along smoothly. The official definition is actually beautifully simple. It's the process of continuously making sure that your communication plan is actually hitting the mark. Are people getting the information they need? Are they engaged? This is so not a set it and forget it task. It's much more like constantly taking your project's pulse.
And this quote right here, it just gets right to the heart of it. The goal isn't just more communication. That can be just as bad. The goal is optimal communication. It's all about creating this streamlined flow of information where there are no bottlenecks, no lost messages, and everyone has exactly what they need right when they need it.
Okay, so if we're going to be the air traffic controller for our project's information, what do we actually need on our dashboard? What are the essential inputs to make this whole process work? So first up, you start with your playbook, the core project plans. Your communications and stakeholder plans are basically your map, right? They tell you who gets what info and how they get it. But the real intel, the good stuff, comes from documents like the issue log and the lessons learned register. These are going to tell you where communication has failed in the past so you can spot that potential trouble way before it happens again.
Next, you need to look at the real-world data. Work performance data gives you the hard numbers. Are we on track? Yes or no? But then you've got to consider the context around it. Now, enterprise environmental factors, that's just a fancy way of saying stuff you can't control, like the company culture or what the market's doing. And organizational process assets, or all the tools your company gives you, things like email templates, reports from old projects, and all those official procedures. Okay, so you've gathered all your inputs. Now what? How do you actually analyze all this stuff? Let's talk about the toolkit you're going to use to figure out if your communication strategy is actually working. Your monitoring toolkit is really a mix of high-tech and high-touch. On one hand, yeah, you've got your project management software that's tracking all the data. But on the other hand, you have human intelligence, your own expert judgment, and, this is crucial, your interpersonal skills. You should never, ever underestimate the power of just watching what's going on or having a quick, informal conversation. So often, the most valuable data comes from just asking someone, hey, is this working for you?
This right here is a perfect example of what we mean by data representation. It's a stakeholder engagement assessment matrix. Now, this might look like a simple chart, but it is incredibly powerful. It lets you see, at a single glance, the gap between where your stakeholders are and where you need them to be. Take a look at the sponsor. They're neutral, but we need them to be supportive. That gap, that's a massive red flag. It's telling you your current communication strategy with them is failing, and you need to adjust it, like, right now.
All right, we've put in the work, we gathered the inputs, we used our tools, so what's the payoff? What are the actual valuable outputs we get from constantly monitoring our communications?
The outputs you get are super tangible and really powerful. You get clearer work performance information, which means no more guessing games. You can generate really targeted change requests, which lets you fix communication problems before they blow up. And, crucially, you're constantly updating your project plans and documents, making sure they actually reflect reality, not just the plan you wrote 3 months ago.
And I mean, just look at the difference. It is stark. On one side, you've got total chaos, stale plans, stakeholders who are all over the place, and a communication strategy that's just not working. But on the other side, with active monitoring, you have control. You get actionable info, you keep everyone aligned, and you can make those little course corrections that stop small issues from turning into project killers.
So here's the big takeaway. This whole process, it transforms your project documents from these dusty old things in a drawer into living, breathing tools. Your stakeholder register, your issue log, they're not static snapshots from week 1 anymore. They become dynamic dashboards, constantly updated to show you what's really happening on the ground.
So let's zoom out for a second. Why should you care so deeply about this one specific process? How does it all connect to the bigger picture of whether your project succeeds or fails?
You know, ultimately, it all comes down to this. Monitor communications is the feedback loop. It's the thing that ensures what you think is effective communication actually is. It bridges that gap between your plan and the real world, guaranteeing that you are consistently meeting the needs and expectations of your stakeholders.
So I'll leave you with this one question to think about. Is your project's communication being actively managed, like an air traffic controller guiding planes in for a safe landing? Or is it just being left to chance, with crossed fingers and just hoping for the best? Because the answer to that question could very well decide the fate of your project. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.